Peter proposed to Margaret on her 27th birthday. He took her on a picnic to a picturesque spot, and as the sun set on the water, he knelt down and said 4 magic words. Rita, of course, agreed. She was the only one among her friends who was still a bachelor at her age, and it kept her on her toes. However, her life had changed abruptly, and she was now a wife. Peter insisted that she change her job, as he was not satisfied with her previous position. Although she was hesitant to leave and disappoint her coworkers, she eventually found a lucrative position with a new company. Margarita was grateful to her husband for pushing her to take this step. She had been working for this company since its inception 3 years ago, and this year, the management had decided to celebrate the anniversary of the company's branch. After work, Rita decided to go shopping with her friend to pick out an outfit for the upcoming celebration. Even the executives from the head office were expected to attend. For the past week, all the women in the office had been discussing what outfits they would wear to the event. Rita didn't want to stand out too much among her colleagues, but she also didn't want to blend into the background. She and her friend chose an elegant dress that emphasized her figure. Coming home, she showed the dress to her husband. He was preoccupied with his own thoughts, however, and barely glanced at the outfit, only nodding in approval. For the past 6 months, Peter had been under stress at work, which made him irritable and often quarreled with his wife. Rita was tired of the constant tension, but tried to support him in difficult moments. However, Peter's behavior towards her became increasingly harsh. The turning point came on the night of the corporate event. Just before Margarita left home, a domestic quarrel erupted into a heated argument with her husband. Rita left their apartment, slamming the door with such force that Peter's ears rang. Arriving at the corporate party in a bad mood, and with a strong desire to drown her sorrows, Rita took a seat at a table. She was out of sorts and felt isolated, with no one to talk to. Only to one close colleague did she talk about her family problems and her reluctance to have fun at the party. The colleague nodded sympathetically and patted Rita on the back, which only made her feel worse. She'd always hated being pitied, a feeling instilled in her by her mother, who believed that only weak people sought pity. As the evening wore on, and after drinking a whole bottle of wine, Marguerite's mood began to improve. As she watched the guests and her superiors having fun, she noticed that people had gone dancing and invited her to join in. She declined, however, citing fatigue from her high heels. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the tables were cleared, a man approached her. It was one of the head office managers who had come to celebrate the branch's anniversary with the staff. Rita responded to the greeting, and a casual conversation ensued between them. Although she wasn't in the mood to talk, she answered briefly and politely so that her boss wouldn't think she was being rude. In fact, Anthony seemed quite attractive to her. Anthony, as he introduced himself, was handsome and well-dressed. Rita had noticed him at the very beginning of the event and had been discreetly observing him. His good manners, expensive suit, and attractive facial features made him attractive to any woman. As Anthony sat next to her, a daring idea occurred to Rita. Under the influence of alcohol and the desire to avenge her husband for a spoiled evening, she decided to sleep with her boss. She later wondered where the idea had come from. She had never considered infidelity before and had always disapproved of those who engaged in it. "Are you married?" she suddenly asked in the midst of their conversation. Shocked by her direct question, he replied that he was single. Daring him, Marguerite offered him some privacy. Strangely, at that moment she did not think about the possible consequences of such a proposal, such as the fact that she could lose her job. She was more concerned that Anthony might politely decline so as not to offend her. Mustering up her courage, she asked the impertinent question. With a sly look, he leaned closer and whispered, "Where are we going?" His whisper sent shivers down Rita's spine. The situation was both exciting and unfamiliar. She suggested we head to the restroom first, and he could discreetly join her so as not to attract attention. Agreeing with a nod, He waited for her further actions. In a state of alcoholic intoxication, Rita stumbled out of the hall and headed for the bathroom. She looked at herself in the mirror, assessed her appearance, and closed the door behind her. Anthony knocked as agreed, and she let him in. As Margarita drove home, she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. On the one hand, she felt a sense of satisfaction that she had avenged her husband for his constant quarrels and today's bad mood. On the other hand, she felt terrible, and the more sober she got, the worse she felt. Waking up the next morning with a piercing headache, she prepared herself to feel shame. Opening her eyes, she realized she was not in bed, but on the couch. To her surprise, Peter was standing in the doorway, looking at his wife reproachfully. Struggling with the pain in her head, Rita lifted herself up and noticed that she was still dressed in yesterday's outfit. The dress had slid down, and she was horrified to find that she was wearing neither tights nor underwear. She wondered if Anthony had taken them as some sort of trophy or souvenir of last night. Not knowing what to say to her husband's unspoken questions, she simply pulled the blanket over herself, covering herself with it. Margarita stared silently in front of her, unable to find the words to explain. Peter's anger burst out, and he started screaming, trying to forcefully lift Rita off the couch. "Get out," he shouted, throwing derogatory comments in her direction. In response, Rita screamed, tears streaming down her face. "This is your fault. I'm tired of our constant fighting. You're being hysterical. I'll leave on my own, so don't fire me." With these words, Margarita jumped out of the room, and an hour later was already sitting in a cab, heading to her parents' friend's house. She had nowhere else to go but to her friend's house. She couldn't stay anywhere else. All the way there, she sobbed in the back seat. The driver, sensing her distress, didn't ask any questions, but silently handed her a pack of tissues. After the divorce, Rita borrowed some money and left town, tormented by the memories associated with Peter and primarily with herself. She was fired from her job, and Anthony had a hand in it. As a result, Margarita had been subtly pushed into writing her resignation letter. Now she deeply regretted her action, which had led to so much trouble. Soon after her first interview, she found a new job, but she did not like it. But she had no choice. She had to make a living and pay back her debts. Left alone in a strange city, in a job she didn't like, she realized the gravity of her mistakes. But it was too late to turn back the clock.